It's just shy of 8 o'clock in the morning. The sprinklers went on in the yard today, so that's good. You can see they're kind of wet, which is just what I wanted. I don't see any evidence of rust or corrosion on this guy. Don't see anything similarly on the 810 or on the 275. And while we're at it again, let's go ahead and check those axis locks. Still functioning fine. Looks like not a lot of stuff in there, so the only maintenance I'm going to be doing on any of these blades is just cleaning them off, you know, for sanitary reasons, because sticking with our whole survival scenario we're doing here out in the field, what if we weren't supplied with food, had to hunt some animals, and had to skin them and cut them up? So we're not going to go that far, but I am going to use all three knives just to cut through some meat, just see how it works out, see how they handle a more domestic type situation in the middle of all this, like, you know, as we might use them, and don't want to eat dirty, gross meat. So I'll be cleaning the blades, but that's the only maintenance I'm doing to these things for the duration. We can see a little bit of rust starting to form on these blades here. Now, this is not a fail by any means, because we already said carbon steel will corrode if not cared for. And just take a look over there. A few little spots of rust on the blade on the survival knife. Okay. Not so much on this side as the other side, but that doesn't look like rust to me. That looks like dirt, but you can see we're getting some spots here. Let's see, we got a few little spots up here. None really on the belly of the blade down there, but over by the tip. And you can see there's a couple little chips. I will, of course, fix that with some regrinding before we're all done and the redress is done. So this D2 steel is holding up pretty well. And of course, there's nothing at all, no corrosion, nothing, where the Cerakote is still intact. Once again, a few spots forming right here on the tip, a little bit right here on top. A couple more spots right there. Over there on the serrations, you can see some right there. But where the Cerakote is still intact, it's doing fine. It's doing great. So I'm not going to clean this rust off right now. I'm going to leave these rust spots on to see if it increases or not. We'll get rid of all that rust and make it look really pretty when we're all done. But let's move on to the next test. So for the next test, we're just going to do some basic bark stripping. We're going to strip the bark off these limbs as if we were going to maybe build a shelter out of them, or, you know, hunt with them or whatever. Start with the good old survival knife here. Right. So I like the way the 275 cuts. Again, nice heavy blade, really comfortable handle, lets you just get a really good grip on that knife and slice through whatever you need to slice through. And so if I had to carve this into a spear or whatever, I'm sure that it'd be very easy to do. So good performance by the 810, but as usual, the thing that keeps killing this one are these scales that come on it. They are not comfortable at all for really good gripping and working with your hands. Overall, you know, just day to day, I like the feel of the knife, but the more I really try to grip down on it and make a really secure hold on it, this is not comfortable at all. So that's one of the things I'm gonna have to keep in mind when I remake this one. Yes, this is grippy, but this isn't as grippy over here. But if you just compare the two, I mean, so much more comfortable if you just look at the cut and the shape of these scales and everything. So anyway, one more test down, let's get to the next one. For the next test, we're gonna be testing the tips again. Not penetrating wise the way we did with the Kevlar, but just gonna see if it gets dulled out too quickly. Just stabbing into some basic 2x4s. So I'm gonna start again, as always, with the survival knife. Go to the 275. Okay, not bad. I'm really starting to hate working with this 810. No kidding. Something that we should never do with knives we really love. Some people know the secret, some don't. Cutting cardboard is one of the worst things you can do for your knife blade. Absolutely, and it has to do with all the different way the molecules are arranged and sorts of sciencey stuff that I don't quite fully understand myself, but I know that cutting through cardboard kills your knife blade. So we're going to do a little cardboard hacking with each knife, and then we're going to see what the result on the edge is. I'm pretty sure that all of you watching this video couldn't quite tell, but there was a noticeable change in the ease of cutting through that cardboard as I went, from the first hack down to the last hack and the last slice. And as expected, the good old survival knife over here, okay, this guy just had trouble from the outset. It's not designed for that at all, but it actually didn't really lose much edge than what it started with. I'm owing the big difference in the quality of the steel, 1095 carbon steel versus the D2 and the CPM M4. But the one that actually won that contest, that just remained as easy, or just about as easy at the end as it was in the beginning, was the M4 steel on the Contego. So finally this guy won something. Slicing through the cardboard, no matter how many times I did it, was just a lot easier with the Contego than the other two. Now, it's not to say it was hard with the 275, but it, like I said, there was a noticeable difference and an increase in difficulty to get that nice clean slice and cut through the cardboard as I was going. Okay, this next one is really just because it seemed fun to me to do. So I'm going to take some aluminum cans. We're going to stab a couple times through them and see what effect it has on the blade after we have done the cardboard test. All three blades seem to have just torn right through that like a hot knife through butter. They're definitely noticeably duller than when I started the original test way back at the beginning, but I don't think cutting through the actual really thin aluminum of the can has done a whole lot to them. These three guys are definitely getting more than their fair share of abuse during this test. I'm going to turn the camera off a little bit because I don't want to just film repetitive stuff, but I'm going to go back through another cycle of the digging in the dry, hard earth, and then go back to some more chopping, and then I'll show you the wrap up after that's all done. We'll look at the blades again. So I was inspecting these guys, and it seems that just by doing a little wipe to get the dirt off and everything from the blades, I seem to have gotten rid of the surface rust that was on there before. I mean, there's a few little speckles, but it doesn't look as bad as it did yesterday, which is pretty good, actually, pretty amazing. You can see the wear has really increased on the coating after I did some additional tests in the dirt and everything that I didn't record, just like I said, to avoid repetitiveness. But here's where we're at. And the reason I've only got these two out here right now is because the next test I'm going to do really doesn't apply to the fixed blade. I want to really get the frames here encased in dirt and everything. I want to get as much crap inside these axis locks as I can. I really want to see if they're going to, really foul up and not work anymore. Once that's done, the last remaining test is going to be a little bit interesting. I'm actually going to mix up a little bit of salt water in a dish, and these guys are going to sit for the rest of the day and the rest of the night just in some very shallow salt water to see what the rust factor is on this. And then once that's all done, we'll do the final evaluation on them. These are pretty much good and filthy now. I shoveled some dirt directly in there. I mushed it around in the dirt and everything. I made sure to get some weeds and stuff. They're still working pretty well. Let me see if you can hear the stuff grinding in there. Looks like the 810 is having just a little bit more, I won't even say a problem, it's just a tiny bit sluggish compared to the 275. Even after all that stuff, I mean, it's not pretty. There's a little bit, tiniest bit of resistance, but these guys are still functioning perfectly normal. The small pebble got right in there in the hole for the axis, and that would have jammed this whether it was open or closed. I realized that, but that would be something pretty easy you could fix. All I'd have to do is tap the knife out. That's exactly what I did, and the pebble came out. What I didn't mention before was that while the blades are made of carbon steel, everything else involved, this is all stainless steel liners, stainless steel fittings, and hardware on the axis lock and everything. So while we're doing all this rust testing on the blade, it shouldn't be an issue for the actual liners of the axis itself, because being made of stainless steel, it should resist that corrosion and everything a little bit better than the blades once the coating's gone. Got all three knives sitting in what is quite obviously a baking pan. It's filled with water and sea salt. This is not very scientific, obviously. I just took a bunch of salt, poured it in the water, mixed it up, let it dissolve. Took the knives, put them back in the dirt, got them all crappy, and threw them in there. So I'm gonna keep these knives in here for you know, a number of hours. I'm not gonna clean them off, just gonna take the blades. I'm gonna stick them right back in that soft ground over there and let them sit overnight. So tomorrow will be the last day where we do the evaluation, where we look at it, and we'll see what really becomes of these knives. The final cutting test tomorrow as well, to see how they really held up over the last 3-4 days. Well, these have been sitting in here most of the day, so I think we're just about ready to take it out and take a look, see how it's going. Now, I'm not sure if this is going to show. I can't really tell on the viewfinder right here, but I see rust and stuff on the tip of this one. Not quite sure if that's rust or just markings on the blade or whatever, but you know, I'm actually hoping to get a little bit of corrosion on here so that we can judge how well the steel holds up. The water, I can see some kind of, you know, I don't know if it's just dirt or some rust, you know, floating around in the water. Remember, I put these guys in kind of dirty because I wanted to really get the access locks muddy and gross. There we go. So this one, you can maybe hear it. Yeah, there's definitely a bunch of gunk in this one. I'm not sure if you can hear everything moving around in there. Definitely kind of jammed up with mud and gunk and everything. So I think we finally found the death of the axis, fouled up with debris and foreign objects and stuff like that. However, it does still actually open and close. It's just not easy and smooth and flowing to do it. So all these guys going back in the dirt. I'm gonna sit there until probably the morning, and then, you know, that'll be the final day of the test where I take them off, whatever corrosion's on there, get that cleaned off the blade, use it to cut up some food, see how the edges have held up, if they even still hold a decent edge. I mean, I can tell you right now, definitely not what it started with, but I mean, they're still fairly sharp. If I wanted to, I could cut myself with it, but obviously I don't want to. So I'm gonna get these guys stuck into the ground, and we'll see how they're doing in a little bit. It is a cold and windy morning here today, but we're getting the knives for the last day of our test. I didn't end up leaving these guys stuck in the ground all night. I stabbed them in initially and let them sit there for several hours, but then I took them out and just kind of re-wet them, re-wet the ground, and then laid them down on the grass. I'm back inside now to take a look at these knives, and yeah, they've got some corrosion on them. They are not looking as good as they once did. But I think that was the point of all this now, wasn't it? So to redo the Paracord test to see how well these things cut through some basic cord now. Oh, that's, yeah. These blades have certainly gotten a workout. They absolutely, definitely are not as sharp as they were at the beginning of the test. Yeah. So let's go ahead and try the 275. This is the results with the D2 blade, and now let's try the Contego with the CPM M4. Well, that's still cut, but I don't know if that was fair because we used serrations on that, so I'm going to try to do it with the straight part with the belly. All right, well, the belly was kind of ineffective in the outset. So with the serrations, the Contego is still cutting this rope pretty easily, but the other two knives, I mean, it's really worn down. I came back outside to see the knives in better light so we could really see what's going on with the blades. I apologize for the wind. It's Idaho. It never stops, but Taking a look at the 275. On this side, I don't see a whole lot. I mean, there's some scattered spots. You can see some on the spine over there. A little bit on the cutting edge on this side, not a whole lot. Now, the side that was face down in the grass for most of the night, they've got a lot of rusty spots in there going on. The Contego, both sides are bad, but this is the side that was exposed to the air for most of the night, and you can see basically where grass was laying on it. You can see the rusty spots, and over here on the tip and on the spine, over there also. But if you switch to the side that was face down in the grass all night, wow, that's just a lot of rust forming. Over there, another grass mark. On the serrations, you can really see we've got some rust going, and on the cutting edge, and also on the Benchmade butterfly, you've got, I don't know if you can see it here, we've got some rusty spots forming right there. And then finally, the Army Air Force survival knife. It's very dirty. It really held onto the dirt from the last test, so it's kind of hard to see, but you've got rust going on there and on the top of the swedge, and all along the cutting surface there. Turning it over to the part that was face down in the grass. A whole lot. Now, it is hard to see the differentiation between the dirt and the rust, but I can see it in this natural light. I don't know if it's transferring to the camera or not, but along the belly, you've got a lot of rust. Along the front surfaces and the swedge, you've got a lot of rust, and then along the cutting edge. So that's exactly what I wanted. I wanted to see what it was going to take to rust out these blades and really affect them. And on the flip side, you can tell that wherever the coating has remained on each of these knives, and on the survival knife too, it is protected from all the corrosion and all the rust really, really well. It's dirty, but there's no rust and no corrosion going on wherever the Cerakote and whatever coating is on this blade, I'm not exactly sure what it is, has survived. So had we taken the steps in between tests to clean off the knives and give them a light coat of oil or tough cloth or something, anything like that, I'm sure this rust wouldn't have been here. But this is a really good experiment to see what happens to these knives when you don't take care of them. On the positive side, neither one of them has really fully rusted out. There's a little bit of rust that we can get off to use these knives again out in the field, but there hasn't been the amount of rust that will cause these to be ineffective as a working tool. I came inside again just for a little quiet from the wind. I want you to hear what's in the joints and what these things sound like when you open and close them. I hope you can actually hear that as well as I can. Here's some grinding, but now check this out. The axis locks still function, although there's clearly some stuff grinding around in there, and it's a little bit sluggish. They clearly do function damn near perfectly. If you look, and I'll try to get some light on there because I didn't look at this outside, you can actually see corrosion forming in the uncovered portion of the back of the blade where everything meets. You can actually even see a little bit forming on the stainless steel, the axis lock over there, which does surprise me. You got the same thing going on here with the Contego. All the blades are now clean and rust-free. What I ended up doing was I soaked each one in some hot soapy water just to get all the dirt and everything off. Then I took some WD-40 and coated each blade and used a very, very fine steel wool pad to do some basic scrubbing just to get the big surface parts off. Then I took a scouring pad on my Dremel and I gave everything another coat of WD-40 and then a really good buffing on all the exposed areas with all the rust with that scouring pad, followed up with some more WD-40 and then another rinse with hot water and then rub with the steel wool pad, followed by another really, really good rinse in warm water, and then I took some rubbing alcohol and just scrubbed everything down with a sponge just to kill off any bacteria or anything on there, and then once again washed it with some hot soapy water. So with clean blades, clean hands, and a nice clean cutting surface, I'm just going to go through a couple cuts. I'm going to start with an apple. I'm going to move on to some meat. I know this isn't fancy or scientific in any way, but I like apples and I like steak, and that's part of my lunch. Now, you all know we saw the Paracord test we just did and how ineffective these knives were. Let's see how that apple does. It's not too bad. It's actually pretty hard to force my way through that apple, though, with this knife. Actually, a lot more force required to get through the apple than I would expect with a regular old kitchen knife. You know, you could run this knife right across the skin of the apple and nothing happens. Same with the other two. The blades at this point are so dull and so beaten up. don't know if you heard the squeaking involved, but number one, these knives are very clean. Number two, it takes a lot of effort just to cut through a simple apple. All we've got here is just some plain old, good old American beef, USDA approved chuck steak. I'm gonna slice it up a little bit, see how it works out with each knife. And this is with no pressure on it whatsoever, just letting the blade do the work. It's not bad, not a bad cut. If I push down, it cuts a lot easier. If I were to do a chop on it, not very effective, but, and again, no weight being put on the blade, just slicing with the blade itself. And we get a fairly decent cut, but not great. Putting a little weight on the blade gets better, and then takes a little bit of effort to chop through. Again, no weight, just using the edge on the blade. And it's actually cutting a lot finer and a lot better than the other two knives, but just to speed it up. Cuts pretty nicely, you know, with just the edge. Since this one has serrations, let's give that a go. Serrations go right through it. So these serrations are completely unaffected by our test, which is nice to know. And then to chop, the chop almost goes completely through with the 810. So the blades are still usable. They're decent. If I was out in the field and I had to use this to, you know, catch some game, skin it, field dress it, cut it, they'd work out for me. Now that we're done with all the events on our test, I'm actually going to strip these two Benchmades down. I'm going to disassemble them completely. We'll take a look at the insides, and then we'll talk about the remake and the giveaway portion. Test is all complete. I've got the knives totally disassembled for further cleaning and inspection. As soon as I got these guys broken down, I started looking for rust that we didn't find before. And in the case of the 275, I did find just a little bit, and it's kind of hard to see over here, but in the axis lock, we've got just a little bit, and I'm not sure if it's from the lock itself, which is stainless, or if it's from the pivot section of the blade, which has some rust on it as well. Just a couple of little spots of corrosion that I don't think are coming out very well right now here, but over where the blade pivots. Other than that, though, it's in great shape. For the 810, got the same thing, got a little bit heavier rust going on over at the blade pivot area. Now, mind you, these two areas would not be coated by anything anyway, so these would always be exposed steel and would always be prone and vulnerable to corrosion and rust. But on the 810, you see it starts inside that little pocket and goes all the way around. And then just a little bit on the axis lock, once again, just like the 275, although I'm still not sure if that is on the lock itself or if that belongs to the blade pivot area. But as for the washers in both are dirty and beaten up, but they held together pretty well without being pitted or anything, or any kind of serious damage, so I can just buff those out and shine them out pretty well. It'll work fine. Something sort of surprising to me, on the 275, I found out that the backspacer area that I thought was made out of solid steel is actually made out of G10, which means that when I remake this, I can make this backspacer out of anything. I thought because of the design of the knife and that it's advertised that you can use this back end area as kind of a pommel, I thought that it would be made out of steel, but actually only the part in the liners are steel. The part that goes in between is G10. So we're going to talk about the remake in a little bit, but just while I've got it right now, anybody that has a good idea of what this should be made of in the remake, you know, throw those ideas in the comments. I'm thinking either jade, because I'm in love with jade no matter what project I'm doing, jade G10, or maybe carbon fiber. But anyway, the screws and everything, no problems with them. Everything came out nice and easy. Nothing was rusted in there. Nothing was worn. There's a little bit of residue from the thread locker that I'll get off there pretty easily with a nylon brush. For the pivot bolt, everything's good there. Clip, everything good there, the same. For the 810, same situation. Pivot bolt, everything's good. Screws are good. Everything's fine there. For the thumb studs on each, a little bit of corrosion on the inside, but I can clean that off pretty easily. The backspacer on the 810 is made out of steel, by the way, just to prove it. And that's because it also incorporates the carbide glass breaker. So it wouldn't make much sense to put something like that inside G10 or plastic or some other substance. So this has got to go back in the knife as it is if we're going to include that carbide glass breaker. If we're willing to lose that, I can make this backspacer out of anything we want, and you know, we'll think about that as it goes along. The overall results, I thought that the test was pretty successful. I feel good going through a series of events that hopefully not only serve myself, but will serve others. I've gotten some comments and some PMs from people saying that they own one or were thinking about the other, or they don't own either one of them, that they're thinking about buying. Hopefully some people will find all this information pretty useful and knowledgeable. I know that a lot of people just probably want to see the remake, the custom work, and the giveaway, but I'm hoping there's just as much people that are going to find this actual test as entertaining and as useful as well. As for the giveaway, okay, this is the part that I know everybody's been waiting for. I still haven't come up with the actual criteria as to how we're going to decide who gets the knife. I do know there's going to be the one main prize, which is going to be one of these two knives over here once it's all redone. And then I've got, depending on how much work I get done, between 5 and 6 smaller prizes. Just because, you know, I've said before, I don't know, I have this streak and I feel kind of bad when a lot of people just sort of vie for the same thing and only one of them gets it. And while this is, you know, either one of these is going to be a pretty significant giveaway going on, these things both retail for, I think, $200 or more on the Benchmade website. And I know you can find it for less, but with no kind of discount or anything, that's what you're paying on Benchmade.com for either one of these knives. I just have a series of other less expensive knives that I've been working on. Some of them I think are kind of like diamonds in the rough. I paid just a little bit for them, but they're actually outstanding tools. So I've got a bunch with custom work on it, and I'm going to give those away as well. And we'll get to all that later on. Still looking for good ideas on what to do with the actual knives for the remake. I've got some PMs and a couple comments talking about moon glow and putting some glow in there somehow, and I like that idea, I really do, especially considering that I want to use the C-Tech on there. Here's the only problem. The place that I normally get all my materials and stuff from, totally out of moon glow, but I think I have a workaround. I've ordered something that I don't want to get into it now until I know it's going to work out. But I have it on order, and I'm waiting for it to arrive. So as soon as that gets here, I'll start doing the rework that's going to incorporate that. But yeah, once again, any ideas anybody has, think about it. If it's going to be your knife and you're going to get one of these, what would you think would be really awesome to have in terms of scale material, patterns, any extras, you know, any kind of accessories, whatever. And we'll see how all that works out. I can tell you that one of the blades is getting stonewashed and one of them is getting mirror polished. I don't know which one. I'm not sure. I thought about maybe putting some more Cerakote on or some Duracoat. But I figure in something like this, we're going for a fancy look. Anybody can get a plain old subdued, you know, black-coated Benchmade blade from the website. If we're going to do some custom work, let's make it look pretty nice. All right, guys. This has been really fun for me again. Thanks, everybody, for sticking with it and watching. One more video to come, which is going to be the unveiling of the final work and everything, and then talking about who's going to get these knives and the giveaway and all that stuff. So keep watching. If you have any ideas for anything you'd like to see, any other kind of tests, any specific knives that you'd like worked over, tested, or any other ideas for some cool custom work that you'd like to see done on some other knife, just let me know. And as the schedule permits, I'll get to it. It's all good experience. So thanks everybody for watching, and I'll see you all again real soon.
I used to dream about how it could be when I would be older, when I'd really be